Thank you, Jonas and Katarina, for putting this event together, and thank you for inviting me to participate. So I'd like to present my research entitled Majority Acculturation Through Globalization, the Importance of Life Skills in Navigating the Cultural Pluralism of Globalization. And I just need to be able to change the slide. Yeah. Oh, the study I'll be presenting was conducted in collaboration with my colleague from Pakistan, Mohammed Adil Kamran. And in this study, we approached the topic of majority acculturation from the perspective of globalization-based acculturation. So reflecting how majority populations and others across the world are affected by intercultural contact. So this contact can be direct, proximal, as you see in contact with immigrants, for example, or it can also be indirect, remote, as seen in interactions through social media. So I'll try to highlight some of these aspects during my presentation. The aim of the study was to examine how life skills are associated with the endorsement of peaceful dialogue, meaning in life, and perceived stress through what is termed global orientations, and that is multicultural acquisition and ethnic protection. And we did this in a cross-cultural perspective in the context of United States and Pakistan. I'll start out by briefly presenting this concept of life skills central to this study. And the World Health Organization has defined life skills as abilities for adaptive and positive behavior that enables individuals to deal effectively with the demands and challenges of everyday life. So this is kind of a broad concept reflecting abilities that we all possess, at least to some degree, and that we use often and often without thinking or being aware of it. These life skills are said to be able to promote mental well-being and competence in young people when facing the realities of life. And life skills can also be developed through interventions, education, and in that way help people handle everyday life challenges. So in this study, we used a particular understanding of life skills, which was developed by Professor Preben Bertelsen. And in this perspective, people vary in how developed their life skills are. And the life skills are categorized into three: participation, attunement, and perspective taking. For the first category, participation describes the abilities related to participation relations and also for developing a sense of belonging within one's context. And we have three life skills in this category: relationship, brains, and community. Then second, we have attunement, which concerns the way people are shaped by contextual conditions, how people adjust to these. And we also have three life skills in this category: attentiveness, pragmatic planning, and ethics. And then finally, we have the third category of perspective taking, which concerns the ability to navigate multiple perspectives on life, including understanding the perspective of somebody else. And we have four life skills here: awareness, reflection, empathy, and navigation, which includes some understanding of the cultural and social systems like laws, belief systems, and so forth. And these life skills are set to help people gain mastery of their lives, and also they might help people to navigate the complexity in everyday life caused by increasing globalization. So to define globalization, we describe it as something that involves increased interconnectivity and cultural exchange across geographical distances. And this happens through trade, media, technology, migration, and tourism. So cultural globalization can initiate acculturation processes in populations that are not migrating, for example, majority groups in different countries. And this interconnectivity is, by many scholars, understood as being a general process across the world. However, the consequences of globalization are said to be very different in regard to specific locations, for example, in Pakistan and the US, which we'll be looking into in a minute. So in this study, we assume that one's life skills would shape one's reactions to cultural globalization. And within globalization-based acculturation, we have two general global orientations, and this is work done by using a scale and work done by Sylvia Chen. And these global orientations are described as exclusionary or integrative reactions to these new cultural influences. So accordingly, we have multicultural acquisition, which is conceptualized as an open-minded and proactive approach to intercultural contact. And such integrative reactions can lead to behavior accepting, learning, combining new cultural elements, as well as appreciating cultural diversity. And on the contrary, we have ethnic protection, which is conceptualized as a defensive response to a perceived threat to one's ethnic culture. And these exclusionary reactions can then lead to people emphasizing their ethnic culture practices and maybe objecting to intercultural contact. So these reactions to globalization-based acculturation are in some ways comparable to the classical acculturation strategies of integration, that is appreciating or integrating cultural diversity, and also separation, keeping one's heritage culture. However, in the measure we use, there are no specific cultures assessed. For example, we don't mention Pakistani or American culture. And also the conception of ethnic protection is different from the separation strategy, as it includes more of a defensive reaction, and also including aspects of ethnocentrism. So in our study, we examine how life skills through these global orientations could be associated with various outcome variables. And we included peaceful dialogue, which relates to people's orientation towards societal dialogue and harmony. We included meaning in life, referring to the experience or the quest to find purpose in one's life. And we included perceived stress, reflecting experiences of unpredictability and overload in one's life. So the general assumption behind the study was that globalization may disrupt or destabilize sociocultural context, leading to challenges in this less structured and more heterogeneous world. So this process might be stressful. It might disconnect the culturally derived aspects of meaning in life. And also globalization highlights the importance of peaceful dialogue and harmony in this interconnected world. So we hypothesized that life skills could promote a more deliberate and proactive response to cultural globalization, which would be characterized by multicultural acquisition. And also, this could lead to a more adaptive outcome in regard to peaceful dialogue, meaning in life, and less perceived stress. Also, we expected that a lack of life skills could activate these more automatic reflex reactions to cultural globalization characterized by ethnic protection, and in turn result in a more negative outcome. And as mentioned before, we did this study cross-culturally within two highly dissimilar contexts in regard to globalization, Pakistan and the US. And both countries can be categorized as large countries in regard to population size, but they do differ greatly in regard to globalization, or some of these proxy measures of globalization, Facebook use, or the KOF cultural globalization score, which indicates that the US is a much more globalized context as compared to Pakistan. So we collected data among students in these two countries, and we have about 300 participants in each group. And we then tested our hypothesized indirect model and reached acceptable fit. We then also tested invariance between these two samples and found that there was a significant decrease in model fit, indicating that the results are significantly different across the US and the Pakistan sample. So in the results, our hypotheses were only partly supported by the results. We found a direct association between we found a direct association between life skills, which is comprising all the three categories, and the three outcome variables, with the exception of perceived stress in the Pakistani sample. We also found a positive association between life skills and multicultural acquisition in both samples, and a positive association with ethnic protection only in the Pakistani sample. Multicultural acquisition was then positively associated with peaceful dialogue in the US sample, not associated with meaning in life, and also a bit surprisingly, positively associated with perceived stress in the US sample. Ethnic protection was negatively associated with peaceful dialogue in the US sample, positively associated with meaning in life in the Pakistani sample, and positively associated with perceived stress in the US sample. So overall, multicultural acquisition appear to be a more important aspect in this regard of the globalization process in the US, while ethnic protection may be more important and also a more adaptive aspect in the Pakistani sample. So this also highlights some of the differences in the consequences of globalization across these contexts. We then also ran a postdoc analysis to examine the three categories of life skills independently in this indirect effects model. So again, we constrained paths across the two samples and found a significant decrease in model fit, indicating that the results are significantly different across the two national samples. So look at the specific categories of life skills. Participation was positively associated with multicultural acquisition in both samples, positively associated with peaceful dialogue and meaning in life in the Pakistani sample, and negatively associated with perceived stress in the US sample. Also, participation was, and it's surprisingly, positively associated with ethnic protection in the US sample. Attunement was not associated with the global orientations, but negatively linked with peaceful dialogue in the Pakistani sample. Also, attunement was positively associated with meaning in life and negatively with perceived stress in the US sample. Finally, perspective taking was positively associated with multicultural acquisition in both samples. Additionally, it was positively associated with peaceful dialogue and meaning in life in the Pakistani sample. So in regard to globalization, it appears that participation and also perspective taking are important skills for navigating multiculturalism in this regard. So highlighting some of the results here, at the end of my presentation, it appears that achieving a meaningful, unstressed, and harmonious life appear to be related to this acquisition of life skills. And then indirect associations between life skills and the outcome variables, especially in the US sample, highlight the importance of life skills through this multicultural acquisition in this highly globalized context. And in particular, we found that participation, perspective taking, but not attunement, was associated with multicultural acquisition in both samples. And then finally, life skills appear to be adaptive abilities in intercultural situation, particularly in the more globalized context. And in the Pakistani sample, we found only one indirect effect between life skills and meaning in life through ethnic protection, which was a positive association, which was a bit interesting. And this could reflect how there's like a difference in regard to the US holding a more dominant position in regard to cultural globalization with greater export of cultural elements, for example, Hollywood movies and so on, while globalization in Pakistan might be perceived or experienced more as a cultural intrusion, perhaps contamination, and maybe even as something that is undermining the local moral values. So this could in turn be prompting this a more defensive stance, which would in some ways be adaptive here. So overall, these a bit muddy results that I presented here clearly show that more research is needed for us to understand the cross-cultural consequences of globalization-based acculturation among majority populations, and particularly qualitative work would be useful in understanding the particular local context in more detail. So that was it. Thank you very much.